Can you guys hear me okay? My name is Dina Katinsky, and I'm the Interim Chief Advancement Officer at the College of Medicine. It is such a pleasure to see so many of you here this evening. Welcome, Golden Alumni, Society members, and who are inducted classes of 70, 71, and 72. On behalf of the college, it is my pleasure to thank you all for being here today and for being such an important part of the college's continued tradition of excellence. It is my pleasure to introduce our Executive Dean, Dr. Mark Rosenblatt. Dr. Rosenblatt has served as the Executive Dean since 2019. Prior to becoming the Dean, Dr. Rosenblatt was appointed as the Illinois Lions Charles I. Young Chair, Professor, and Head of the Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences. Dr. Rosenblatt is internationally recognized clinician scientist. Dr. Rosenblatt is a graduate of the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine's honors program in medical education and a combined MD, PhD program, receiving his PhD in biochemistry, cell, molecular biology. He also completed his MBA at New York University's Stern School and MHA at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Public Health. Please join me in welcoming Dean Rosenblatt.
Well, thank you so much, Dina. Really appreciate the introduction, and just wow, it's a pleasure to be with you all here this evening. It's been too long since we've been able to come together in person, and while we can't yet really declare victory over our war on COVID, we can come together and not even have to wear masks all the time anymore. So throughout your careers, all of you have had an impact on the lives of others, reflecting the mission of our College of Medicine. And you've really made our alma mater one of the most important institutions for medical education, research, and patient care in the nation. And as you reunite with your colleagues and visit your university, your College of Medicine this weekend, I think you'll have an opportunity to enjoy firsthand the progress and many advances that the college has been making in education, research, and healthcare delivery. It's a very special place. Well, the world has changed a lot, perhaps, since you've been at the college, since you've had a chance to walk through the hallways and sit in our classrooms. But one thing that has really been enduring is our college's mission to serve our communities in Chicago, Illinois, and beyond. And this doesn't change. You'll recognize as you meet some of the students, they share those very same passions that you had when you entered medical school some years ago. It's still our top priority to educate future physicians and researchers who will follow in your very important footsteps. And one day we hope that they too will be here with us celebrating a 50th reunion for the college and reminisce about their time in medical school and also have a chance to talk about the impact that they had a chance to make. So this, a little off script, but this is really one of my favorite events of the year. I'm fortunate I get to see the difference our college makes on almost a daily basis. I get to visit with our students and see them come in as M1 students and mature and become wonderful young physicians as they leave. I get to see the great work that our researchers are doing to make discoveries in science and medicine that will make the difference in the lives of patients. And of course, I still see patients, I'm an ophthalmologist, and have a chance to see the care that we can deliver to communities that really need care. What I don't get to see on a daily basis is the impact that our alums have throughout the city of Chicago, the state, and the world. You know, I can look at the numbers. I know that 1/3 of all the physicians in Illinois trained in our College of Medicine. I see that on paper. I can see even the accolades that many of you receive and around the country. But to actually have a chance to talk with you, hear your stories, and really get to know the stories behind that impact, it's wonderful. So I do also thank many of you for your personal contributions to support the College of Medicine over the years. Some of you in the class have even been faculty for a number of years. So your generosity to enhance the educational experience of our medical students and the experience of our patients has been deeply appreciated. And you really ensure that our current and future students are recognized for their hard work. You're ambassadors for our college and their dedication to medicine with scholarship and awards. You ensure that our school continues to lead groundbreaking research and innovation in healthcare and medicine. Our work and our achievements really are your work and your achievements. It wouldn't be possible without you and the legacy that you've left as alums of our college. So once again, I thank you so much for your continued engagement and support of our College of Medicine. And as always, I look forward to meeting you and towards the end of the evening, hearing your very personal stories. And we're truly delighted that you've been able to come back to celebrate with us this milestone, this golden alumni milestone. And so with that, I'd now like to introduce Ann Branson, who some of you may have had contact with, our Senior Director of Engagement and Special Events for the University of Illinois College of Medicine. Ann.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. This has been a long time coming. I have been talking to some of you for 3 years, so I would like to welcome you all back. I would also like to tell you that my events background is what I do, and being right here in front of the podium is my least favorite part, so please bear with me. But I am happy to see you all here. For those of you that have traveled from far away, thank you so much. And from those of you that are from Chicago area, we love seeing you here too. And for those of you from Chicago, please come see us at the college more often. Don't wait another 10, 50 years. Modern medicine is great. I'd like to take a special moment to thank the class agents who helped get all of you here. It's their work that really helped get you here. The messages from us do some, but it's the hard work of the class agents that really get everybody here. So on behalf of the University of Illinois College of Medicine, I thank you. And I would like the following people to stand up and be recognized. Dr. Pierre Gabor, class of 1966. Dr. Stephen Fisher, class of 1966. Dr. Lynn Dale, 1970, who incidentally has been working on this since 2020. Dr. Randy Mullen, class of 1972. Dr. Larry Starr, 1972. And Dr. Nancy Starr, class of 1972. Thank you all, I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be able to, I'd like to know, I was about to read Dr. Mullen's, I was like, I didn't write that. I'd like to now ask Dr. Mullen to come up to do a welcome to the Golden Anniversary classes. Dr. Mullen.
Well, thanks, Ann. I'm honored to be able to address this auspicious group. We gather as people who have experienced a half century of change in our profession. We are those who predate CT scans, MRI scans, who've learned on the fly to deal with new challenges called human immunodeficiency virus and COVID-19, health maintenance organizations, and the ascendance of non-physician healthcare providers. While no mean task, you have met the challenges and you have succeeded. We return to geography, which looks very different than what we might recall over these 5 decades. No Cook County Hospital, no the Greeks. Press St. Luke's is its own school, and we're now UIC, encompassing both what we called Circle Campus and the Med Center campus. Now, 50 years may not be much for a tree, but it's a ton of time for a metamorphosis in our profession, in our hairlines, and our waistlines. We are of sufficient age both to have played games on a Commodore 64 and to have charted patient encounters on an electronic medical record. My class would recollect admission of women as 17 out of 206 members of the class. And we now return to an institution that numbers the ladies as 56% of the current classes. Change, change, change. And whether we leaped forward into the changes or whether we dragged our heels, we have certainly experienced change. But one thing hasn't changed. It's the drive and the compassion that has attracted students here for so many years. This remains a place that draws some of the brightest and the best to the teaching font. This school remains a place where excellence is normative and where what's new in medicine is standard table talk. It's fitting and proper for us to acknowledge the contributions to medicine that have springboarded from this institution. But it's equally important and very appropriate for the institution to invite back physicians who have contributed so richly to the stature of the school. Innumerable patients have been so enriched by the skills and compassion of this audience. Our friends, classmates, have impacted the House of Medicine with technologic advances, professional leadership, and most of all, with healthcare that is spelled C-A-R-E in capital letters. Now, these couple days will be times for nostalgia, reconnecting, and for honoring of our institution and the graduates who have performed with such distinction. Welcome, docs. It's an honor and a pleasure to be in your midst. Well done, and carry on. The reality of the passing of time also has a somber moment, some moments of sadness, and I now invite Dr. Lynn Dale from the class of 1970 for the purpose of remembering the class members who are no longer among us.
Takes me longer to get up to the stage than what I'm going to say here. And that's unusual because usually I'm talking all the time. Sadly, it is time to recognize those classmates who are deceased and have been denied the choice and privilege of being with us tonight. Unfortunately, since we are honoring these reunion years, the list is sadly a bit too lengthy to read, with a total of 84 deceased classmates from the classes of 1970, 71, and 72. I would ask everyone just to pause for a moment of silence for about 10 seconds to remember the classmates from those years. I think it's about 10 seconds. I want to point something out here. When I was sitting back there, this looked to me like an X-ray up here. I don't know if you can see it. It's a handprints up here. There's another set of handprints here. I don't know what was going on here, but to me, it looked like I was reading X-rays, but I don't see any fractures, but I don't know what was going on. I better come back down this way.
Thank you, Dr. Dale. I don't know if those of you in the back heard him, but he said that the handprints on the mirror back here look like an X-ray screen. Sorry, not a doctor. It is now my pleasure to introduce one of the halves of the doctor's star, which I have been saying I get a kick out of every time I talk to them or write it in an email. Dr. Larry Starr from the class of 1972 to provide a toast to the classes of 1970, 71, and 72. Dr. Starr.
Thank you, Ann. I'm Larry Starr with my wife Nancy Stoit, the class of 72. We had a pediatric practice in southern New Mexico, and it is our pleasure to return to the big city once again. This evening, we want to propose a toast. Let us begin by honoring our university, our professors, instructors, mentors. They took raw M1s and in 4 years started us on successful careers in medicine. I would like to also honor all of our former classmates, many of whom we have not spoken with nor seen for over 50 years, and with whom we spent so many hours together. We shared lectures, labs, clinical rotations, highs, lows, successes, failures, but most of all, we created wonderful memories. Lastly, I would honor all of us here tonight, some from far, some from near, but all to renew old acquaintances, rekindle all friendships, and fondly recall old memories. May our futures be filled with good health and great happiness. Until we meet again, salute.
I'd now like to invite Dean Rosenblatt back to the podium to induct the class of 1970, 1971, and 72 into the Golden Alumni Society. Dean Rosenblatt.
Thank you so much. And of course, cheers to those being inducted into the Golden Alumni Society, and of course to those celebrating more than 50 years. We have some here even from the class of 1960. Amongst the largest and most diverse medical schools in the nation, we are proud to have the largest, most diverse, and most accomplished group of alumni. Along with our great faculty, you, the alumni, enhance the reputation of the university every day in all that you do. The college is committed to enhancing student achievement and their leadership potential so they can follow in your footsteps. Alumni from the College of Medicine continue to have tremendous impact on the health and quality of our lives. I'm grateful for this opportunity to thank you personally for your dedication to this profession and to the college for more than 50 years. So, of course, it's now my pleasure to honor the classes of 1970, 71, and 72 on their 50th anniversary by officially inducting them into the College of Medicine's Golden Alumni Society, which honors alumni who have celebrated 50 years or more since their graduation. Classes of 70, 71, and 72, please stand, if possible. And as you stand, a current student or staff member will present you with your 50th year medallion. So every induction has to have a medallion, of course. So on behalf of the College of Medicine and the UIC Alumni Association, and in honor of this very important milestone anniversary, we thank you for your contributions to the profession and for returning to your alma mater this weekend. Look forward to a wonderful couple of days. So please, we'll take a few minutes to distribute these medallions. Of course, we invite you to wear your medallion to all the reunion events with pride so that others know of your inspiring commitment and dedication to the field of medicine and to the patients that you serve currently. As a note, again, after dinner, Anne will call everyone to attention once more, and members of the Golden Alumni Society will be invited to stand, introduce themselves, and share memories of their own College of Medicine years or comment on their careers or life, past and present. So thank you, and please enjoy your meal. We'll be back again after dinner service.
Hello, everybody. I'm back. If I could have your attention just for a few minutes, please. Hi, it's me again. I just have a few housekeeping things before we start the Pass the Mic this evening. I want to let everybody know that tomorrow for the tours at the college, if you're staying here, we do have buses that are leaving from the Illinois entrance, which is on the south side of this building, and that's departing on the hour. So the first bus will be at 10 o'clock, and it will go until 5 o'clock, which is the bus for the reception. It is ADA accessible, the shuttle all day. And at 5 o'clock, it's accessible, ADA accessible, but the only one of the shuttles is accessible. There's two of them, so make sure that if you need the ADA accessibility, that you take the first one. And if you did sign up for a tour, please keep the tour that you signed up for, because we have a very coordinated ballet going on tomorrow to make sure that everybody gets to see everything. So we appreciate your cooperation. And we have students that are helping with those tours, so thank you. And now I would like, let me see. Oh, so now we're going to do, actually I would like to also recognize the classes that are beyond the 50 years. If you wouldn't mind standing at this time. We do recognize the 50 years, but the classes that are celebrating beyond 50 years, I would love for all of you to stand. And we thank you all for coming. We're very honored to have you here tonight. And then now we're going to move on to a Pass the Mic. We're going to have David. David, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand. And I'll pass the mic as well. We'll alternate. We ask you to please take 1 or 2 minutes to just introduce yourself, talk to us about where you are now or what your fondest memory here. But just please share a few things. We ask that you stick to 1 or 2 minutes so that everybody gets a chance to speak tonight. Oh, I hear some academics in the audience that are laughing at me about the 1 or 2 minutes, right? I know you people. All right, thank you so much. And again, we'll see you tomorrow. Who's going first? Okay, I picked Dr. Nancy Starr to go first.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello to everybody. I'm glad to be here tonight. We drove here from New Mexico via Pittsburgh since our son is a stroke neurologist in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Sorry. And we still have relatives here in Chicago. I have fond memories of medical school, and I met my husband here in medical school. Larry and I did our residency in pediatrics in Cleveland, Ohio, and then we moved to New Mexico. And we're a little town called Alamogordo, which is 200 miles south of Albuquerque and 80 miles north of El Paso, Texas. We had originally planned to join the Indian Health Service there, but when we went to sign the contract, they told us that they couldn't guarantee us the same city or the same state. So we decided to search for an area that needed pediatricians, and I had never heard of Alamogordo, but we arrived in 1975. Larry got his license to practice medicine in New Mexico on August 1st of 75, And our oldest son was born on August 2nd, and he was Larry's first patient. And we retired in 2013. Our sons are both physicians. They went to the University of New Mexico. One's an anesthesiologist, and one is a stroke neurologist in Pittsburgh. And our son-in-law is an anesthesiologist. All of our daughters and daughters-in-law stay home with their children because they are married to rich doctors, not pediatricians.
We're rotating the mic. I think he's.
I'm sorry? What?
Is this okay?
Okay. Hi, I'm Bill Metzger, class of 1970. I wanted to say that the first thing you learn when you get to medical school is that being smart is not enough. Everybody is smart. You learn that very quickly. So you have to be single-minded, extremely focused, clinically probably obsessive-compulsive. And if you are, and you're smart, you probably make it through. But medical school is one of those things that you can only do once. You wouldn't want to do it again, and you probably couldn't if you knew exactly what it entailed. I remember a fond recollection of studying into the early hours of the morning with my roommate. And we had this thing going with the guys in the room next door where somebody would come up with a weird word or weird saying, and they would pound on the walls and yell it out loud to see whether they could get the response that they knew what it was. My favorite one was Mongol Spot. I'm not sure what it is, but I do remember that one time I did know what it was. And it absolutely did nothing for me through all my years of practice. I also remember that at the time I was dating this girl, and I felt that I could give one Saturday night to a date every 2 weeks. Never explained this to her because socially I was fairly unadept. Inept. Thank you, dear. That's why I got married. And eventually, when we stopped dating, she still did not know why we were going out every other week. And I was so inept that I didn't realize that she would think the obvious, that I was dating somebody else. It was just totally not in my comprehension because I was so completely focused in what I had to do. And so when she called and I explained this to her, she said, well, thank God, now I can explain this to my roommate. But it was a unique experience and one that prepared me for life as a physician, obviously, afterwards. So thank you, University of Illinois.
Hello, I'm Lee Fisher. I'm class of 72, and I'm up here because two reasons. One, I have to wear reading glasses, and two, I had to write down what I was going to say so at least I could kind of remember. We were the class of 72, so we started in the summer of 1968, and some of you from the class of 1971 will remember a classmate named Bruce Fagel. And Bruce got so involved in medical politics that he basically flunked his sophomore year. So they kicked him back, and he actually graduated with our year in 1972. Parenthetically, he later became a plaintiff's attorney in Beverly Hills. So there you go. Anyway, Bruce was brilliant, and he noticed there was a need for a preclinical experience for first and second year students. And so he started the Medical Education and Community Orientation Program. We called it MECO. Some of the goals of the program were to introduce preclinical students to the clinical aspects of medicine early in their training, to reinforce learning in the first year of medical school by relating specific information to clinical medicine in a hospital setting. So in the summer of 1969, which is when our class was, and I participated at West Suburban Hospital over here in Oak Park, we had 26 communities in Illinois and about 70 students. In the summer of 1970, there were 80 hospitals involved in this program and 141 students in Illinois and 45 plus in other states. In 1971, there was either a pilot program or a full program going in 18 different states. And during that time, we were able to get a grant through the Student American Medical Association from the Sears Foundation for I think it was $75,000 at the time, to expand this program nationwide. And I became the first chairman of the Medical Education and Community Orientation Coordinating Committee to coordinate students from all over the country who were starting programs in their areas. And I traveled to a bunch of states I've been in Jefferson City, Missouri, Austin, Texas, Iowa City, once only in any of those places. The program continued after we graduated and expanded nationally, and over the years during my involvement with the AMA, I'd hear stories from medical students about how they were participating in some kind of program similar to that, or actually the MECO project. So fast forward 50 years, I live in Indianapolis. I teach part-time at the Marion College of Osteopathic Medicine in Indianapolis, and I observe students, give them feedback, et cetera. So I'm walking into the building last year, and I notice a sign announcing a meeting of the American Medical Student Association, which was the name that Student AMA later became American Medical Student Association because they didn't want to be associated that closely with the AMA, et cetera. So I saw they were having a chapter meeting there. So I said, I'll wander over and see what's going on. So they asked me to say a few words. It turns out the same program is still ongoing, albeit by a different name, for the students at Marion College of Osteopathic Medicine. I'm sure no one knows the origins of this program or remembers the origins of this program, but if there's one thing I'm proud of during my medical school years at U of I, it's being an integral part of a program that affected medical students, probably thousands of medical students over the last 50 years. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I'm proud to be an Illini and glad for my experience. Thank you.
I'm Lynn Dale, class of 1970, and I came to a class reunion in, it's my cane, there's really an obstacle there. Class reunion in 2015, it was number 45, and I was the only student from 1970 to come to that reunion, so when I went for the class picture, it was just me, so I did multiple poses, different angles. And that's my Facebook picture now. Well, there was a quiz. It was during the daytime, and we had to take this quiz. And one of the questions was, what's the most significant thing that happened on the U of I Westside Medical Center campus in the last 110 years? And the answer was, the Chicago Cubs won the World Series in 1907 and 1908, back to back. This is in 2015. So I started doing some research, and I came up with this. There's a lot of different answers to this question, but it was about a neuropsychiatric institute was behind left field of where the Cubs played before they went to Wrigley Field, and it was behind Cook County Hospital. And it was said that the neuropsych patients came to the window and watched the baseball games. In 1915, the Cubs moved to Wrigley Field. So the neuropsych patients couldn't watch games anymore. So they talk about that curse of the Billy Goat, 1945, that's when I was born. And the Cubs were in the World Series that year, and they didn't win. So it is said that baseball was the origination of the saying, "You're way out in left field," which could mean you're wrong, or it's BS, or you don't know what you're talking about. So 2015, what is it, October? The next year, 2016, the Cubs won the World Series. Well, I told this story over and over and over again to different people in Chicago and around the country, and no one had ever heard of it. So I started reviewing it again recently, and it turns out the Neuropsychiatric Institute wasn't built till 1931. So everything I've been telling you is way out in left field. It's bullshit, BS.
Okay, I'm Drew Sieben, and I was in the class of 1970, and I told this story already at my table, and it turns out I'm at a table of all D's, okay? And in the anatomy lab first year, I was in the table of all S's. So for people, wives and spouses don't understand, they assigned your placement alphabetically. And this SAMA thing plays in as part of the story. Anyway, there was Greg Shore, Mark Schinderman, Drew Sieben, and George Silber. And so 3 times a week in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we had anatomy dissection, real anatomy dissection, greasy, stinky, formaldehyde-laden cadavers, and you started out with some very nice clothes and some rubber gloves at that time that the formaldehyde taught you that it just chewed them up. So within a few weeks, that was over. This is bare hand from the rest of the year. And early on, Mark stopped coming, Mark Schinderman, and which was fine. It gave 3 of us more time to do the dissection. But Mark was heavily involved in SAMA, Student American Medical Association thing. So once a month, Mark would come through the anatomy labs, and there was a blackboard on each anatomy lab, and he would take a piece of chalk, and he'd be dressed in a full-length white, no, he was a freshman medical student, so he had a short white coat, immaculate beard, perfect rubber gloves. He'd pick up a chalk, and he'd put down, Student American Medical Association meeting, such and such date, 1:30, such and such place. And so this went on all year, and most people remember Dr. Krakauer. And he watched this happening and never said anything. In the middle of April, Mark showed up again, and by then we've got this set of anatomy clothes that's the only thing we wear them for is dissection. Mark's got his perfect white coat, gloves, trimmed beard, and he looks to us and says, I need to do something. I said, Mark, there's not much to do, we're pretty much done. He said, no, I need to do something. I said, well, okay. So there wasn't much for him to do, but he showed up every session the rest of the year. And we later found out that Dr. Krakauer said, if you don't get yourself in there to that anatomy lab the rest of the year, your summer is going to be spent in the anatomy lab dissecting a cadaver on your own. The interesting thing is Mark went into psychiatry And he became a multimillionaire in Chicago running methadone clinics, where addicts had to come into these facilities to get these methadone shots. I was hoping Mark would show up tonight because, I see he didn't die, so he's out there somewhere.
I'm Marvin Premack from the class of 1970. And, you know, for most of us, medical school is 4 years of a blur. And you start it, and then at the end you go, what happened? You know, and so much happens that you have trouble remembering it. But there's some things along the way that don't even have to do with the medical school that stand out in your mind. One of them was the blizzard of '67, when none of us could move, and when nobody could come and go from the hospitals, none of the staff. And here we are, we're first-year medical students, and we were asked to assist the nurses at the hospital who are now working 3 days straight. And I will never forget that, because they resupplied the hospital from a helicopter on the roof. But we were there as first-year medical students helping the nurses going, wait, this is what we're going to wind up doing here? I mean, it was pretty amazing. Then in April of '68, after Martin Luther King was assassinated, I was living at the Medical Center Apartments on Harrison and Ogden, and standing at the top of on the roof. Pretty much most of the city was on fire, and you could hear gunfire continuously all night long. And we got up in the morning to come down to go to class, and there was a Jeep with a machine gun on it in the first floor, outside of the first floor. And in the first floor lobby were probably a dozen soldiers with rifles and bayonets fixed. And that was so we could safely leave the medical center apartments and go to the classroom. And I remember going to pathology class at that time, and all of a sudden you could hear gunfire, automatic weapon fire. And I remember the pathologist going, you know what? There's more important stuff going on here than pathology. Why don't you all go home? And I'm thinking, what is happening? We live in this city. You know, this is insanity. And then 4 months later, we all lived through the Democratic National Convention, where we were asked to put on our white coats with a Red Cross armband and go to Grant Park and take care of all the people who had been injured by the police. And I remember going down there, and on the east side of Michigan Avenue were soldiers lined up shoulder to shoulder. And on the west side of Michigan Avenue were the Chicago police. And the soldiers were there to keep the police away from the demonstrators. And again, I'm thinking, really, you know, I'm going to medical school. What am I doing here? But those are the kind of events outside of medical school that you really don't ever forget. And it sort of puts what you're doing in perspective. And, you know, you're young and impressionable, and I'll never forget those times. It was fascinating, and it was scary in a way, yeah, but interesting.
When? Oh, you're recording, okay. My name's Bernie O'Malley, and the class is 72. I want to talk about my first day at medical school and my last day. Our first day, we're in the large auditorium. It was hot. It must have been 110 degrees. And they show us a movie of a live delivery in full color. About 12 people passed out or threw up. That was tough to get through, but I managed it. The last lady that talked to us came from the clinic, and she had celiac disease. At age 50, I found out I had celiac disease and wish I had figured this out much sooner. My last day, I was at Illinois Masonic Hospital doing OB, and I just delivered a set of twins to an anesthesiologist who wanted more pain medicine than I gave her. And I had an arm wrestling contest with Sam Sugar. I was quite strong at that time. I'd worked on the railroad during the summers and was quite muscular. And I'm going for the victory, and suddenly I heard a large snap, and my arm, which I thought was over there in my brain, was actually on the other side. Luckily, Dr. Ted Fox was one floor below us. He was the Chicago Bears orthopedic surgeon. He grabbed my shoulder and my elbow because I told him what I had done and didn't believe me. He twisted it. All of a sudden, there's my bone sticking out. And that's the last thing I remember of medical school. I was done.
All right, well, I'm not going to tell a funny story. This time for a change, I'm Bob Hammer, class of 72, and this whole reunion thing started with Randy Mullen getting in touch with me back in April and asking me, you remember what you were doing on April 20th, 1970? And I do. And that was the first Earth Day and the culmination of our efforts with the health organization to preserve the environment. HOPE, not to be confused with the hospital ship Hope. We had to put that on the bottom of our stationery. And we went up to Abbott Lab in North Chicago to protest their dumping crap into Lake Michigan. And we were very successful. It forced them to start publishing a glossy magazine called Abbott's Commitment to the Environment, which is a quarterly glossy thing that they still publish to this day. And all I can say is that now as we look back over these years and what has happened, I just want to apologize to all of you that we couldn't have been more successful back then.
Hi, my name is Mike Goodman. I'm from class of 72. So many memories, it's hard to separate out into individual things. I was going to tell stories about Mike Plunkett, but he's here tonight, so I can't tell any of those. And regarding one of my associates that was talking about being with his girlfriend, and she was wondering how come he was only available every other week. My girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, was wondering when I was studying. So somehow we all made it through. One of the things I would like to do a tribute to someone who many of us had exposure to, and that was Cliff Pills. Cliff was the head of medicine at Westside VA. Mort Bogdanoff was the head of University of Illinois hospitals. They frequently locked horns. They didn't have the same personalities. But Cliff was probably the person that led me down the path I went into, which was internal medicine. He was the most unusual person. He was coarse and rough and gruff, and he was polished and soft and educated. He was cultured. He was an opera aficionado. He would play opera at the beginning of grand rounds every week. and didn't even expect us to necessarily identify it, but it was something that we needed to learn. He would prime a student, usually in the morning of grand rounds, with some obscure answer, and then quiz all the white-coated professors sitting in the first row. And then it ended always with, you idiots, you don't know anything. I bet a third-year medical student would know the answer to this. And the kid, one of us, would stand up and throw out an answer that no one had any idea what he was even saying, except it was the right answer. He knew medical history. He was a big fan of William Osler. He spent time teaching us the history of medicine and the path we were on. He could be so tough, and unlike Bogdanov, who people didn't necessarily relish because he was tough too, but he was more gruff in his approach and still a good educator. Piltz had a side on him when he would be rough with you. You knew his intent was to educate you and make you a better person. I had the opportunity to be on his service a number of times, which was interesting. I don't know if anybody knows the name Rodney Nelson, but Rodney was, I think when I was a student, he was an intern. When I was an intern, he was a resident. And the two of us spent a lot of time together. While we were on Piltz's service, we had an opportunity. We had a patient that we suspected of having TB, and we were out of reagents on the floor, so the two of us couldn't wait any longer because we wanted to start treatment. And we went down into the hospital lab to get the reagents, and we were confronted by the lab tech and got into a big fight with her that we were in her turf and we weren't supposed to be there, and we had to deal with that with Morning Report the next day. And he wasn't happy with us, but he understood we were doing it for the sake of the patient. But we got to the point where we could play off him and found his sense of humor. We were on call one Halloween night and had Morning Report the next day, and we wound up being able to get one of the x-ray techs to take x-rays of a carved pumpkin for us, and then presented the patient as a jaundice patient who had come in during the night. And we had labs made up with Billy Rubens of 17 and so forth, and then he said, oh, okay, I'm done with the labs, give me the x-rays. And we threw up the x-ray of the pumpkin, and he was so pissed. So, but the last of the stories, well, I'll have to shade a little bit. Was it was Friday, grand rounds was over. It was winter time, and the 6th floor lobby where the elevators were was where everybody would congregate before we split up and went down to our individual wards and went back to taking care of patients again. And everybody was just socializing, and all of a sudden he comes out of his office and he's got his top coat and a winter hat and a scarf wrapped around him, and he's going to go down the stairs. He flings open the door to go down the stairwell right across from the elevators. And as he's already entering the stairway, I say, Dr. Piltz, banker's hours, you're going home a little early today. And I was of the mind that I had the ability to talk to him like that. And you heard him going down half a flight of stairs, sort of stomping his way down. And before the door closed, you could hear the feet were coming back up the stairs. And the door flung open, and he said, and this is where I'm going to adjust it a little bit. He said, Goodman, you shit. It's none of your damn business. I'm sick and I'm going home. Go back to work. And I loved him.
What's your name again? You just talked. Can you give me your name?
Yes.
And what year? Okay. I got a story about Clifford Pitts, and I liked him. I think he was a very good educator. But was he at the VA hospital? Okay. I'm sitting in there with a bunch of other medical students, and he told me, I don't know if he's asked me a question or what, but he told me I look like a shoe salesman. He said, you don't look like a doctor, you look like a shoe salesman. And that bothered me a little bit, okay? Maybe I do look like a shoe salesman, but I can tell you that I was determined to finish medical school. But one morning in the winter, I was headed for the VA, and I stopped right before I crossed a crack at a regular crease in the sidewalk. And I thought, if I don't cross that, I'm quitting medical school. And I stood there. It was real cold out. It was really cold, so I could turn back. I was going to quit medical school if I turned back. I went across that crack, and I went in. I think it was Dr. Sergio and another associate told me that I had what it takes to get through medical school. And I've worn a lot of shoes, and I've never sold any shoes, either in a store or in a garage sale, because I always remember that, okay? It's okay to be a shoe salesman. And back to 1967, about that winter storm in January, I lived on 5500 North, and I took the L train that morning down to medical school. And as soon as I got there, they told me to go back. So I did what they told me to do. I went back, and I made it back to 5500 North. I thought I was the only student that showed up that day, but I don't know. Maybe from what somebody else said, some students stayed there. So once again, I'm way out in left field.
Norton Fishman, class of 61. Listening to you all, profound experience. It was December 1st, 1958, second year in histology, and I hear a noise outside. We were just opposite of the morgue, facing it, and I see fire engines, police cars, and we look out, there's a smell of smoke. It goes down 3 blocks, each one bearing a body. It was the Lady of Angel School fire. It was just before their dismissal. Fire started in the basement. 92 students, I understand, 3 nuns. Never saw anything like it. We went down to the morgue. They had no room. A tragedy. And it is what it is. But what it brings to mind, I think what we all know, is the evanescence of life. And we've been in this special college, this sort of like in days of Greek, this place of teaching. And we've been trained as gladiators. We're all here, all of you, each in your own way, each in your own mission, to go out and say, life is perishable, and suffering can be everywhere. And your job, you've been trained, and you will train others. Go out, do your mission, do your best. The world needs you. So I thank all of you, all of my compatriots here who've been here. I think this university, I could never have gone to medical school if it wasn't for U of I. I could not have afforded anything else. It gave me a place to be, but more importantly, and I'm sure for all of you, it gave us a thing to do, a reason to be, and purpose, and an accomplishment. So I thank my peers and my brothers here and my sisters here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Plunkett from the class of 72, and Mike Goodman and I and a number of the people here did residency at the U. And yes, a Cliff Pilt story I heard afterwards from a colleague of mine at Swedish Covenant, Al Somberg. He was a junior faculty member before we were there. He and Pilts wanted to mess with the pathologist. They sent a liver biopsy specimen down to the pathologist, and the pathologist couldn't figure out what the heck it was. What did they biopsy? a corned beef sandwich. Now to something more serious. So as I think it was junior medical students, we're on peds at County. And our attending this was a special attending, Robert Mendelsohn. Did anyone ever remember Robert Mendelsohn? He actually wrote a medical column in the Tribune when the Tribune was the world's greatest newspaper. And he was a very sophisticated man, delightful teacher. So our assignment that day, we had a young child in County, and we were to find its mother, or whoever was taking care of it, bring that person in, and then have a conference with all the nurses and medical students, et cetera. And part of the thing, this was back again in 1970, I guess. Our assignment, we had to find this person, who they were. People didn't have telephones. Some of my classmates actually went out, found this person, got her to come. She ended up being the grandmother of the patient, and a lovely black lady. And so we're there, we're talking about this and that on the baby, and she's sitting there very politely. So then it comes to the big question. The baby has a diaper rash. So he points to the three medical students, us. He says, now, doctors, what would you do for this diaper rash? Well, we were 23-year-old, 24-year-old boys. We didn't know from beans about diaper rashes, okay? So nobody can come up with anything. So he asked grandmother, he's his grandmother, now what would you do? Oh, she's very politely, doctor, not my part to say, you know, you're here in the hospital, all these nurses and these young doctors. Now he teased it out of her. Well, what would you do? Well, at home, we use cornstarch. He looks to the nurse. What do we use here? Cornstarch. He points to the three of us, and he says to the grandmother, he says, remember, one grandmother is worth 3 pediatricians. Never forgot that.
Here you go.
I'm Pat Dix from the class of 72, and I have both good and bad memories of medical school, as you might imagine. There were 205 of us in our class, and there were 17 women. And more than once, we were told that we didn't belong there, and, you know, my friend didn't get into medical school, and you took his place, and you'll never practice medicine. Well, I'm 76 years old, and I'm still practicing medicine. So he was wrong. First, I have to say that I went to grade school with Michael Plunkett. So we've known each other a long time, haven't we, Michael? Yes. I also want to say that Ed Stulken and I participated in the student, whatever that thing was called. I don't think I knew what it was called at the time, but we went to Canton, Illinois, a small town in central Illinois, and I will never forget it. It was a great experience. And Dr. Gibbs, Jack Gibbs, was the general surgeon. And a couple of years ago, I saw an article from him, maybe in the Alumni News. I don't remember exactly how I got back in touch with him. And I called the alumni office and said, can I have Dr. Gibbs' address or phone number or something? And she said, no, I can't give it to you, but I'll give your information to him. And he got in touch with me. Now this is like, 65 years after Ed Stulken and I had been in Canton, and we had the nicest visit. It was just wonderful. And he was, that whole experience was very important in shaping the way I practice medicine. I do maternal fetal medicine. I've been in Springfield, Missouri for 34 years. I have loved every day of being a doctor. It hasn't always been easy. First 4 years after medical school, I have to say, I had a terrible experience in obstetrics in medical school. It was awful. Ralph Wynn was there, and he was, yes. Yeah, do you think? And, you know, really awful things like residents weren't allowed, students weren't allowed in triage, but once they were admitted to that big ward, it was one big room with gurneys that people labored on. I mean, it's horrifying. And then we had to take care of them. I remember taking a lady back to the delivery room, and she had twins, and the resident had taken the husband out in the hall and told the husband that he thought that the second baby was dead. Didn't tell the mother, just the father. So he let me deliver the second baby. And guess what? The second baby was alive. Yeah, he was wrong. Now, you know, we didn't have ultrasound. We had fetoscopes. Remember fetoscopes? Put it on your head. Remember that? Yeah, they weren't entirely accurate. But, and I just, you know, when I was on the service, one of the residents was fired for doing clitoral stimulation during pelvic exams. I mean, I left medical school thinking OBGYN was the worst thing on God's earth. And Bob Condon in the surgery department was very kind, and I had a great surgery rotation. So I went thinking I was going to be a surgeon. Well, the surgeons didn't think so. They didn't treat me very well. And I did 4 years of general surgery, and then I did OBGYN and then maternal fetal medicine. And those 4 years made me a better surgeon and probably a better doctor because I'm not afraid of taking care of sick people. And then I did OBGYN. It took me about 48 hours to figure out the people at Illinois were wrong. It's a great, great way to practice medicine, and I've loved every day of it. So I'm glad to be back. Thanks.
Hey, I'm Richard Brook, and class of 72. My first night in medical school, I was held up at gunpoint. I'd gone up to the near north side to visit a college friend, came back on a shift change at the B station of the L, at the medical center. And I was a country boy, very slow to get up and move, and I was the last one off the train. These three kids that were about 16 years old, they robbed me, so let me keep my wallet, as long as I gave them all the money, $21 or something like that. And they ran down to get in the train going the other way. It was very amazing. Then another great story I have is Assistant Dean Martin Swerdlow. Does that ring a name to anybody? He believed in minimal competence. I love that. He said just as long as you got through medical school, you'd find some place in medicine that you liked and excelled in. For me, it was orthopedic surgery. So, one other story. I roomed with Michael Ainsley, Big Mike. Anybody here know Mike? He was about 6'7", right? Big boy. And we lost him one night. He had been doing one of these paid medical experiments where every day you drink one more drink, and the next day they would draw your enzymes. And this went on and on and on. We're up to about 13, 14 drinks, and we go to a fraternity party east of campus. Polk Street was all dug up at the time for sewage work. Well, we lost Mike. And we're all out there singing, you know, Mike, are you here? You know, in these deep holes on Polk Street. And later we got back to the dorm, and he was found in the shower, naked and singing. He'd been brought in by a policeman, He'd been naked, hanging on the lamppost at Ogden Avenue, right near the medical center. So that's the story of Mike. I'm sorry he's not here tonight. I would love to tell him that story. If we move on to residency, which I also did at Illinois, I have one striking memory of Christmas at the VA. And the security guard refusing entrance to my wife with the baby. That really sucked. And I've never felt good about the VA since then. That's for sure. Okay, that's enough.
Good evening. I'm Donald May. One thing hit me very early on when I started getting communications coming in from Randy and Nancy and Larry was the longevity of our class. Average lifespan of a male is 77. Average lifespan of a female is 81. My high school class, which is contemporary with this group, 63, half of them's dead. We've lost less than 10%. We're doing something right. And I think it's worthwhile taking a look at that. What are we doing differently? Well, talking with the people tonight, there's a lot of nice people here. People are filled with energy here. They're filled with expectation. I haven't talked with anybody yet tonight who doesn't have plans, big plans for the future. A lot of us are still working. Some of us are still putting 80, 100 hours a week in. I hope the rest of you aren't, but there's something that we've got going that is really, really good, and I think it bears some further look. And I think it bears taking a look at some of the other classes to see what they're up to. One other thing, being at Illinois was really great. We were there at the right time. My roommate, George Wahiney, and I, and two other guys, Eric Erickson, Jeff Hinman, we went over and Mort Goldberg took us under his wing at the Ioneer Infirmary. We all went through ophthalmology there, and it was great. He picked half of us, half the residency group from Hopkins and half from Illinois, and we had a phenomenal, phenomenal education. And I have to say, I'm glad to see that the college is still under the direction of ophthalmologists. That's a good thing. So I could say a lot more, but I'll let someone else talk. But I think it's really phenomenal, the longevity and the energy of this class, because less than 10% of us have succumbed. And there's something going on, something special. And we need to keep it up. And we can talk about it again at our 75th anniversary.
Thanks, Doc.
Anyone else? All right, well, oh.
I'm Iris Aronson. I started out in the first year from the 1970 classes. My name was Claver. And then I did what young women these days don't do, which is change their names to their husband's names. So I ended up as Aronson. You mentioned Dr. Martin Swerdlow, and I have some memories of him that were so wonderful. He was such an unusual physician as a pathologist and just a human being. I don't know if you remember, in our class in pathology, we'd be sitting in, I think it was 229, and he would be in front giving his lecture. And when he was giving the lecture on miliary TB, he brought a bag of birdseed and would throw it to everybody in the class so you'd know what the size of the miliary TB would be when you were looking at the x-ray. So that was just I still remember that as if it was a year ago. And of course, it was a long time ago. And then another thing about Dr. Swerdlow that I remember, when we had our practical exam, we each got an organ that they would quiz us about. And I remember I got a heart, and it was in a bowl. And when I got to him where he would quiz me, he saw that the bowl was shaking, that the heart was moving from one side of the bowl to the other. So to calm me down, he sat down with me, and we just talked about whatever. He just brought up all kinds of topics, nothing having to do with medicine, until I calmed down, and then we could go on with the exam. So I always remember him as being such a wonderful teacher and just a wonderful human being. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the Department of Surgery. You talked about Dr. Condon. Oh, she's not here. I'm a dermatologist. I did my training at University of Chicago, and I did a pathology fellowship as well. And then I came back to the Department of Dermatology at U of I, and I was there for 42 years until I retired last year. But I wanted to talk about the Department of Surgery because I had the most incredible experience in the Department of Surgery when I did the rotation at University of Illinois. Dr. Nihas was the head of surgery, remember, and Dr. Olga Jonason was the pediatric surgeon and transplant surgeon. And, subsequent my history going on to dermatology would never have imagined that I had such a wonderful experience with these two physicians, with these two surgeons, that I had delusions of going into surgery myself at the time. Dr. Jonason was as incredible a teacher as you would find, and as kind a human being as you would find anywhere. And the same thing with Dr. Nihas, who was the head of surgery for many years, world famous surgeon and written many books. Anybody here who's in surgery would have remembered him, would have known a lot of his writings and his books. But he was also so kind, not only to his patients, but certainly as a medical student, a third-year medical student rotating in that department, it was a pleasure. I know it wasn't always the same for everyone, but I just wanted to say what a great experience I had with the Department of Surgery at that time. And actually with all the departments, and each one had its own issues. I understand what the problems in gynecology and obstetrics in those years too, because I did my rotation at the University of Illinois at the time too. But I'm very grateful to the University of Illinois for everything. You had mentioned about how grateful you were to what it had given you, and I feel the same way. I'm an immigrant. I went to the University of Illinois, started out at Navy Pier, and I was in the first class at the Circle in 1966, graduated, and then went to the medical school in 1966. My father was so proud of me. My parents did not graduate from high school, and I graduated from college and then was able to go on to medical school. And University of Illinois gave me a life that one could not have imagined. And I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heidi Rothenberg. I'm class of 72, and after all these really intelligent and well-spoken memories, I sort of hesitate, but Iris's comment about Dr. Nihus really, it was very charming. I have happy thoughts about general surgery for the most part, mostly because, and then I wound up going into it, which was great. Didn't stay there, but because I realized that I did not want to live that regimented a life. So I wound up in emergency medicine, which for an ADHD person like me was great fun. But I remember making rounds as a student in general surgery. And forgive me, Iris, we did something, I can't remember what it was, and Dr. Nihus made a major, major error. He said, well, I don't know what kind of a doctor Dr. Stevenson would make, but she would make a wonderful nurse. At which point I looked right at him and said, how would you like a swift kick? Which was not particularly wise. I later went to his office to apologize to him, and he looked a little surprised at that. But years later, when I was in general surgery at Evanston, the first Friday of every month during the academic year, all the surgery house staff who were not on call were expected to be at the Chicago Surgical Society, which was held at the University Club. And it was great fun because you got to sit and have dinner with your attendings and see these people as successful human beings, not as the great God that you were scrubbing with, even though at Evanston it didn't feel like that. And we had a particularly sad patient whose volvulus had been missed, who had multiple problems, up to and including hepatitis B, and she wound up with, oh dear, chronic active hepatitis. Am I correct, Don? Probably. And she also was put on clindamycin. This was when the research on clindamycin had been done shortly. It was shortly after that. I think Ronnie Nichols had done a lot of that at the University of Illinois. And she wound up having to have a colectomy because she got a pseudomembranous colitis, and it was really pretty awful. So this lovely woman who had 4 children and a husband who really appreciated her, who was also very, very angry, and that's understandable, had filed a suit. And Dr. Nihus was asked to please review the chart. Now, the surgeon who had taken care of her was very new at the time, and later became the chair of surgery and is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. But be that as it may, this is a horrible thing for anybody to go through. Dr. Nihus read the chart and looked at the opposing counsel and said, this woman is lucky to be alive. How much better can it get? Sorry, that's my thought. I knew there were other things that I wanted to comment about, but I think that I've taken enough time. And I'm so grateful to everyone that we have been so fortunate because we got to practice medicine before it got woke. And then we got to say thank you very much, adieu. Thank you.
Hi, it's getting late, so I'll make it brief. Dennis Corcoran from Rockford, urologist, graduated in 1971. University of Illinois gave me an opportunity that I would not have had otherwise. I was the oldest of 7 kids in a farm family, and it's very unusual. I was the first of my generation to be able to go to medical school. So it's sort of a shout out to the University of Illinois that allowed me to change my life. They took people it didn't matter what your social status, your economic status was. If you could make the cut, were smart, worked hard, and had grit, you could do it. And I thank them for that. I'm going to add one quick story to what was just said about Dr. Lloyd Nihus. I was a 3rd-year medical student, and I was in the operating room assisting. And you remember, those of you that remember, we had those boot covers with the straps. Cyclopropane was still one of the anesthetic agents. And I was there holding retractors, and I think, if I think back, Dr. Nehus did entrectomy and vagotomy for for peptic ulcer disease. He was known nationally for that. But there was a little bit of a language barrier between the anesthesiologist and our surgical service. And so Dr. Nehus had the cautery and was, resecting the antrum. And all of a sudden, we were there and we heard, cyclo, 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 no, no. As it turned out, then finally it became, Dr. Nehus became aware that the anesthesiologist was using cyclopropane. And if you remember back in those days, cyclopropane would blow out 3 or 4 rooms of an operating room and, kill everybody that was, it was explosive. And I'll never forget that. When I left the operating room, I thought, my God, I've come pretty close to a demise here, so I just never forgot that. Well, anyway, I want to give a shout out to the University of Illinois. It was a godsend for me, and it changed my life, so thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Well, we'd like to thank everybody for your stories. We do have some people online, so we'd like to thank them for showing up tonight. I would like to mention that a few of the stories, the Out in Left Field, the NPI, you will be going there tomorrow if you're taking the tour, and there is a plaque out there about the Cubs. There's a plaque at Cook County Hospital. Well, there's a plaque outside the NPI, yep. Is that the neuropsychiatric? It is. Tomorrow's your day. And then also in the MPI building, the Neuropsychiatric Institute tomorrow, the CITL, which someone's going to have to help me with the acronym, what Jenna said, which is a robotic surgery lab. You'll be able to see that tomorrow. And so there's a whole history of the surgeons, which includes Dr. Nehus and Dr. Johannesson. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Remember, the first bus leaves at 10, and it's on the hour from here, returns to the hotel on the half hour from campus. So thank you all. We appreciate it.